A very warm welcome to My Community. It is your weekly program that allows Barbadians that opportunity to share their rich history and heritage and so enrich the lives of all of us. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Thanks for joining us. Now, I'm sure there are some amongst us who have heard of Chapman Street, Chapman Lane, or Chapman Road. But how many of you have heard of Chapman Village? It is a small community in the heart of Barbados, or as we say here, in the heart of Barbados. Ivor Rural spent his formative years here in this community, and he has agreed to recount his wonderful childhood experiences just for you. He begins by placing his community squarely in geographical perspective.
Chapman's Village, St. Thomas. It's sandwiched between Sturgis in St. Thomas and Springville in St. Andrew. Now, it got its name from the Chapman's family in 1789. And it played its role, like any other parish, any other community, in the development of this country. It even played a role in the building of the Panama Canal with the Neblett family, some of the members going there. I also had a great aunt who went to Panama. We've not been able to track her down or her offspring since. Yes. Comprised of a number of families. Starting with the Smiths on the right going down, the Dalrymples, the Burkes, the Niles, the Boynes, the Martins, the Patricks, the Allens, the Jordans, the Browns / Branch, the Boynes again, the Knights, the Lanes, the Browns again, no relation, and the Patricks again, Worrells, Almonds. Now, coming up from St. Andrew, going towards St. Thomas now, you've got the Almonds, you've got the Mackenzies, you've got the Worrells, you've got the Cumberbatches, you've got the Wards again, you've got the Parises, you've got the Allens, you've got the Brathwaites, Coxes, you've got the Mears, and when you reach the top, the Greens, which would have been Orville Green Shop, which was a major gathering point for all and sundry. And of course, with the sand trucks that would have been bringing sand from St. Andrew, and the cane trucks hauling the sugar cane, that was the point to stop during the week, and in particular on Friday evenings. We didn't have a bakery, but we had an individual who would bake. We had Miss Ward who would bake the sweetbreads. We had Miss Boyne who made the pudding and sauce. And what's so significant is that Miss Boyne was really good at it, to the point where what you would call the belly water, they put in that berth. People would hold back to get some of that along with what they were going to purchase. It was that good, and she was that good. It was unfortunate that gas stoves came in. There was some mix-up, and the stove blew up and cost her life. And those were the persons you had in the village. Carpenter was a chap by the name of Shackles. He was a Jordan. Worked very well. I remember, but you were a child and you couldn't make any noise. He worked, and he was provided with lunch. Our meat got cut short, so he would have a full portion. We could only look and wonder to ourselves why. But there you open your mouth and ask a question. May God help you. Cynthia Ford was born in that village. Trevor Sandyford, who was a manager at Broad Street branch of Barbados National Bank, he was born in that village. Submancia Cox, you know, of course, he would have been involved in politics, stuff like that. And then people like the now Deputy Chief Fire Officer. One other person is a Victor Allman, who would have been a policeman. He recruited with Orville Journal, who then, of course, became Commissioner of Police. And then, I'll use this term if my math is correct, he then went on to be acknowledged in the top 100 men of the century for Canada. My cousin, by the way. So that small, quiet village, that was almost everyone was family. Even if you weren't, because you were so close, you were treated as such. Of course, there were a number of persons who lived in the village who worked at what you call then the brick factory, which is down in Greenland, making the blocks. So the village has contributed significantly to the development of this country as other villages have. It's pity that it's not very well known. One other significant thing about that village, it has produced quite a number of centenarians, and I'm prepared to challenge anyone that if you look at its small area, the number of centenarians it has produced, we can rival any other village on the planet. You've got Miss Mears, 105. Boise Rimple, the Tin Smith, 103. You've got Miss Mackenzie, she was 100 and change. My uncle, he was 100 and change. And then very, very close, a number of persons who had a cough the morning, died at 99 and change. So there are thereabout. What is also significant about Chapman's village, as you walk along, you can see the East Coast. And it is believed that the sea breeze coming, this is the belief, that the sea breeze coming off, of course the sea, coming down through the trees, the foliage, and then getting to you, it was purified, and that helped along with walking to cause you to live to be a ripe old age. So all I'm missing now is the walking. All I have to do is the walking, and who knows? Might be a centenarian just around the corner. What more can I say about that village? Let's think about Mr. Dalrymple, the tinsmith. He, of course, that speaks for itself. The umbrella needs to be fixed. You take it to him. The Milo Ovaltine cup, you need to have that you had to wash and turn down so it didn't rust. You sent it to him. You had a hole, you needed fixed. Everything that the tinsmith and the welder does now, he did it all. Yeah. He did it all. Right. The peace and tranquility of that village is second to none. When you look in terms of its moving forward, I have been born in the 60s. Looking at it now, the peacefulness of that village remains the same.
No doubt this remains that way because of what was instilled in the residents of this community. And interestingly enough, many of those residents sat at the feet of a well-known and celebrated primary school teacher who was born in an adjoining community, Carrington Village, and whose name is today emblazoned throughout the heart of Barbados and further afield.
Yes, of course, O.C. Springer. She taught everyone, including some of those who are going to be 100 soon.
A morning, a little fella came in crying. He was 5, 6, he wasn't 6, I think I had him 5 years. I said, what is the matter? He looked at me and he said, Tisha, you can give me a kiss? I said, your mother should give you the kiss this morning. He said, please, Tisha, my mother does only kiss me, Daddy. I'll never forget that. All I had to do, I hug him and I tell you no.
I think the time has come where we should look at the renaming of the Holy Innocents School to O.C. Springer. Every single person came through her, and there were other persons as well very close to her. There's a Miss Holder who still lives in Jackson. They were very, very close. There was Lester Vaughan, a Mr. Jordan, a Mr. Dash, whose daughter, Jessica Brown, an education officer, she's still alive. But those are the kind of persons you came through. Mr. Dash, he had a Falcon 500. He would be coming from St. Andrew. So you knew that while walking to school, You had to be on your P's and Q's because no bad behavior was expected along the street. So there was always discipline even in the absence of your parents. And in my case, my parents who went off to the United States to seek a better living and to help us get through.
Now, the peculiarities of a community are not just its landmarks and natural features. People do make communities and give those communities their special character. Now, speaking of which, Chapman Village has had its fair share of individuals who amused the residents with their peculiarities.
There was Boy Blue. He was a character who, at the changing of the moon, you would see a different side of him. Oh my Lord. 6 o'clock in the morning, and he's going bonkers. The only person who could really tame him was Esteling Mackenzie. A cigarette, and he would be brought in line. Yes, he would go to Ms. Knight's house, and there you would be able to get a cigarette, and it would calm him down. Boy Blue, he was supposed to be the mason. I was pulled in one day to be the apprentice. All of a sudden, Sunday, I was supposed to be the apprentice. So he took me through the paces, mixing. Then he put me to he showed me how you should lay the blocks. And then when he thought I was going good, he was about to take off to go to the shop for a rum and a cigarette. No, you can't leave me. You have to stay here. Right. So that was something else. Then there was Hainsley Allen, a.k.a. Bourbon. Now, we talk about men. Now, this is a strong man who raised 6 children, none of them being his, 4 boys, 2 girls. The mother passed away. The father lived up the street. But he took those children in and he raised them. But the thing about him, talk about a character, he could blaspheme for an entire day and probably not use the same word twice. But would you believe that the children he raised really don't swear? No. That was something that was funny. Here it is. He could do this. You've seen the humorous point of it. You see now this real man side of him raising those children. And he drove for a Dr. Renrick, who lived in St. Andrews, a Canadian doctor. And I remember as a little child, he came to my grandparents and said, I've got 2 jobs on offer. One to drive the ice cream van, and one to work for the doctor. My grandmother said to him, look, you've got children raising. If they take sick, the doctor's right there. You go work for her. So you see the thinking. Yes.
Children in rural communities in Barbados had a similar set of chores to perform daily. These were assigned by their parents or older family members whose responsibility it was to assign those daily chores. Here in Chapman Village, at least one family enjoyed a special chore which no doubt was done in other communities, but to date we have not yet recorded anyone speaking of having performed this particular chore. Now, what was that, Ivor?
You had to learn verses for Sunday school. Now, my grandmother, she worked it out by your age and your size. Ivor, being the biggest of the 3 that she raised, I had to get 3 verses ready. My brother had to get 2 ready. Our sister had to get 1 ready. And you could not say the same thing the next week because there was always a backup. You go to Mr. Branch, Amador Branch, and we would try to say verses to him, and then you slip over to my uncle, who was also a centenarian. 2 brothers centenarians. And much people would not expect this in Barbados. Try saying the same verses to him, and it was like, this youngster is very good this today. What did he say? You said those last week. You got to come refresh ones. So the problem is now, you go back home, there's no ticket. So you had to give an account. So then grandmother got wise. She would remind you twice in the week. You had to say verses. And what she would do is Saturday evening when you're playing a bit of cricket, as you finish, come. Sit down, because she was a huckster in the market. Kneel down, let's hear you, and the whip is there. Be sure you have fresh verses to say. So there wasn't no sparing or rod here. and that was a very significant part in our development as children. And this was across the village. Of course, on Sundays there was no playing. Winston James Messiah is coming over. So you had to keep quiet in the house. Joseph Niles is playing. You had to keep quiet. And his brother also lives in the same village. So these are the types of things that you had going on. And of course, during the middle of the day, take water for the sheep you've got tied out, or move it in the shade, or both. So persons coming up, poor being not being a crime, these are the things that you dealt with.
As expected, Chapman Village was well known for the vibrancy, the life and energy of its community churches. In fact, the activities of these churches became a major aspect of the cultural heritage of the community.
Going from Chapman's Village, you went up, turned to the right, and there was the Brethren Church, the Open Brethren, in that village, and there was an area in that village called Barris Bottom. Talk about when the church lights were out. Back then, you had those tall lights where you pumped them with methylated sprays. You lit them, and that shone brighter than any light we have right now. And when they were out, you had to make your way with a torchlight down through that village. I remember one of my uncles, his wife, she was walking and stepped on a centipede. It promptly hit back, struck on the toe, and that was problems for quite a while. Yeah. So that was one. There were, like I said, there were two churches. There was the Pentecostal by Brother Roach and the Brethren Assembly in Carrington's Village. What the thing about Chapman's Village, when you had the harvest with Brother Roach's church, Hilton Allen was the man to collect the offering. Joseph Niles playing. They had to raise $300 to pay the band. That's what they said. And Hilton Allen was the man to collect the offering. Now, don't think because you didn't go to church or because you were at your house that you were not going to be targeted. He came to every house, collected an offering, and while he did that, out of appreciation, he would have a beverage with my grandfather and other persons. He would make his way right through the village. He would have a beverage with everyone out of appreciation. So there were quite a number of beverages he would have. And what would happen, he would go from having his shirt tied button to by the time he got back to church, the jacket was back, the tie was loose, the shirt was open, but he had that offering collected. This was at the harvest. Now, revival, because it's so quiet in the area, you've got revival now. That's entertainment for us. To see all these people coming in the buses, to hear the guitars and whatnot. And everyone will be standing at the windows, looking in. And then, of course, persons would get their souls saved. People would be speaking in tongues, and the list goes on. So that was all part and parcel of the village.
Well, religion and spirituality for some continue to be a major part of community life. Now, here in Chapman Village, there were certain activities that children dare not do. In fact, anyone who committed any of these acts were deemed as engaging in what, Ivor?
This was high treason. If you threw a stone and it broke a glass. If while playing cricket, you broke a glass. If while playing cricket, you struck the foundation of Brother Roach's church. Brother Roach was a master seat. If you struck the foundation, you were out twice. If they heard the ball hitting any of the houses or the church too often, cricket would stop. So what happened? Something called placement. I discussed this with Cammy Smith. We talked about it. And it's a pity that the West Indies players are unable to do this now. You had to get to the pitch of the ball and place it along the ground. And place it between, because you had about 20 fielders. So you had to get the ball between them, and that's what made cricket so good. But they don't do that now. And talk about playing cricket. The current Deputy Chief Fire Officer, Henderson Patrick. If you want to talk about someone who could bowl and spin bowl, they talk about Mullithrin of Sri Lanka. I think that's where he's from. Henderson in his day, I would put him alongside Mullithrin. And I think you would have it difficult to determine who would be the better of the two. Here it is, you're playing in the road. The roads weren't good, so you had to find an area where you could bat. You also had to be able to place that ball in that particular point. He was not only able to do that, he was able to take the ball, place it in the point, as I said, move it to the right, and then bring it back to the left. So you got ball behind you, or you ended up being caught. He was also able to put it to the left, move it away, and bring it back. And this is on an uneven surface. He was that good. Oh yes, he was that good. Well, we were small, so you didn't get a chance to bat. You had to feel. You had to run the ball because they're going to hit it back. You're on an incline, and if it goes, it's going to go down to St. Andrews. So you got to get that ball. You had the up the hill boys versus the down the hill boys. So you had the youngsters from Sturgis, who would play the youngsters from Chapman's village. And then as they got bigger, you played Welshman Hall. Back then you had, I remember, a club called Middleton. That was in the area of Highland. But of course, we were small. My uncles, they would play for the club. So you heard about it. I only really got known to cricket, but I remember 7-Up Sam talking about a cricket match between Spartan and Empire, and you thought the West Indies was playing Australia. The park did not have didn't have any standing space. I remember that match. It was around 1971-73. I remember that. Now, Good Friday, sacred day. Very few of them. No, I know they said I've excluded myself because you couldn't go to the house. High treason. Go? Oh no, you had, as a matter of fact, my grandmother was a member of the Open Brethren. We were taken along. There was this belief that you had to keep quiet on that day. Handle a knife with caution. No running around because you may break a leg or arm. Don't climb trees. Something would happen to you. It was so sacred a day, you had to listen to the radio and keep quiet. But some of them got away and went fishing, crayfishing, because it was felt that you caught more fish on that day than any other day. This would have been in the Springvale area. It came from Carrington's village, St. Thomas. And funny enough, some of that water came out of Harrison's Cave and made its way all down to the East Coast. Yeah, the water runs in two directions, to Bridgetown, to the East Coast. What I can tell you is that, for me, when we got big enough that we could go, you know, I would catch a cold whenever I went over the water. Middle of the day, you bend over that water, you catch a cold in your face. Oh yes, so you had to stay in the house. You had to keep away from that, yes.
When speaking of community life, many often speak of their days of journeying to the beach in groups. Many of them walk there from their communities to enjoy beach culture. As it relates to those who live in the interior of the island, as the youngsters here in Chapman Village?
Well, here it is, you weren't really allowed to go. And here it is, you're from St. Thomas. Your grandparents don't have the time to take you. They're not going to trust you to go with anyone. So you weren't allowed to go, and the only time that we really got to go was when our Uncle Leroy, late Leroy World, took us to the East Coast, and he picked a nice spot. He stood at the back, and we were allowed permitted to stay right in the front, so you weren't going past him. And that's how it worked. Well, he drove us in his car. And when I got older and I was into weight training, part of the fitness component of it was to ride your bicycle to the beach. Yes.
And that, no doubt, was a very good form of exercise. Perhaps we could learn from that today and apply to our lives. Looking back over 40 years ago, what does Ivor recall most of his beloved Chapman village?
That everyone loved each other. Everyone looked out for each other. If my grandmother baked, nearly everyone in the village got a piece of. And then depending on the closest they were to the house, you may get a whole bread or get a half. And we just could not understand why is she giving away so much. You know, what's she going to leave for us to eat? But it all stretched. And everybody got. You know, you're killing the pig, you engage the pork, you had to get the BA feed bag and you pull out the string which you use to fly the kite. And you cut that paper up to wrap the meat in. And you had to make the deliveries, whether you liked it or not. And we hated when the rain fell and you had to make deliveries. But you had to take it. Yes, you had to. No other choice. And that money, of course, went to buy shoes, went to buy the khaki pants, buy the khaki shirt. You know, those are the things.
Now, this series, Mind Community, has identified the many common threads or the material culture that is found in many communities. Perhaps one of our history students should consider the exercise of bringing together those common threads and presenting it as a research paper, and so contribute to knowledge generation here in Barbados. Ivor Rural has just joined that body of Barbadians whose work has been presented in the audio and visual format. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. This has been My Community. The series continues next week at the same time.